Yes, let me mute myself.
Great. Thank you so much. And we'll let folks trickle in here, but Francisco, or do we have anyone else from Language Access that would like to talk about the wonderful interpretation services that you all provide?
Good afternoon. As always, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure offers interpretation and translation as part of its efforts to reach out to as broad a segment of the community as possible. And if you haven't gotten a chance to use that service before, please click on the bottom right of your screen on the interpretation. Actually, Ninita, have you activated the interpretation channel? In the bottom right of your screen and select the language of your choice. Bienvenidos a todos y como siempre el Departamento de Transporte e Infraestructura ofrece interpretación al español como parte de sus esfuerzos por alcanzar el segmento de la población más amplio posible. Y si no ha tenido la oportunidad de usar este servicio anteriormente, por favor pulse en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla el icono de interpretación y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia. Gracias.
Great. Thank you so much. Francisco,
betcha.
did you need anything else or clarification to make sure that we were good to go on your side? I'm going to assume that not hearing means that we're good to go. And reminder for folks, please update your names to what district, or if you're mayoral or appointee, and request to DOTI staff to also please update yours as well if you happen to be a DOTI staff member, so folks can know who you are and what part of the department you're representing. So we've got a lot on the agenda tonight, so we'll keep rolling forward here. Gary, would you like to go through the roll call real quick? And I think you're still muted. Gary, I can see you're speaking, but I think you're still on mute right now. There you go.
Don't you just love technology? Okay. Alicia Brown, I got 10 so far. Alicia Brown is absent. Amy Quintana, Elaine McCallum. I don't see her.
I think I just saw Amy hop in, Gary.
You see Amy hop in?
Yes, I'm here.
All righty then, Amy, I'll count you. Attending. Brian Carroll. Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm Brian's here.
Oh, you're disguised. Is that what I heard, Jonathan?
Brian Carroll is here. Jonathan Pira is not, as far as I can tell.
Oh. Brian Carroll is here. Okay, I got it. I thought there was some hiding going on there. Okay, and Julie?
Julie is on a leave of absence for the next few months.
Okay. And then Tinsley? Usually is here. But that gives us 12.
Great.
So we have quorum. Yeah.
That meets quorum. Is there a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes? And thanks for doing roll call, Gary.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Thank you so much. I heard June. I also saw Paul raise his hand. So all those in favor of approving meeting minutes from last month, please raise your hand digitally. Great. That's at least 11 board members approving last month's meeting minutes. Any, if you could lower your hand, please. Any opposed? I'm not opposed. I just need to figure out how to lower my hand. I'm guessing, Paul, are you opposed, or you're also working on lowering your hand? Okay, great. Perfect. So meeting minutes passes unanimously. Great. That moves us along to the public comment portion of this evening. Nanita, who do we have signed up for public comment first this evening?
We have Lauren. Lauren, I am going to move you to the panelist. Let me know when you're in.
Great. We'll go ahead and move Lauren over to panelist. And Lauren, since we do have a handful of folks signed up for tonight, will be 2 minutes for each public commenter. I'll start to wave on my screen here when there's 10 or 15 seconds left. But you have the floor, Lauren. Go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great.
Okay, awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren. I live in the West Highlands neighborhood, and today I'm going to be sharing some comments from a petition to fully protect the bike lane on West 29th Avenue, which has been signed by over 550 community members. So I'll jump right into them. Erin says, I live in Sloan's Lake and I ride my bike along 29th Avenue frequently. I've had a couple of experiences that convinced me a protected bike lane would be a valuable addition. First, this past summer, I had a close call with a car while traveling west on 29th. The car veered into the unprotected bike lane while attempting to pass another car that had slowed to turn left. Second, I am trying to teach my children how to bike around town safely, but the last time I rode 29th Avenue with my 8-year-old son, he told me it was too scary because of the cars. Justin said, I live on West 29th Avenue at Tennyson and participated through the community input process for this bike lane. I was very disappointed to see the plans get torpedoed along a large section of the route after we believed the process had been completed. Cheryl said, I'm a disabled resident who uses bike lanes with my wheelchair frequently, but I'm additionally signing this petition to protect the safety of all commuters. Another neighbor said, as a parent in the neighborhood, I find it appalling the city would jeopardize the safety of my children over parking spaces that are not someone's personal property. This is a failure of our city leaders to uphold the public good. Lucas said, I commute along West 29th from Sheridan to Zuni and have had countless scary moments over the last 5 years. I do not feel comfortable biking this route with my family, and I would not recommend it to anyone else. A protected lane would change that. Please reconsider. A safe and usable right-of-way for all modes of transportation is so much more important than storage of personal property. And lastly, Betsy said, there are so many parking spots on the side streets. Seriously, come park in front of my house. Please, I just want to feel safe in my own neighborhood. Thank you.
Lauren, thanks so much for your comments this evening. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Nanita, who do you have next?
Ellen Ross.
Okay, we see Ellen's in the room. Ellen, you'll be promoted here in a minute. And as soon as you are, you've got 2 minutes to give your public comment this evening.
Ellen, are you in?
Ellen's in the attendee. She's not yet a panelist, from what I can see, Nanita.
Oh, for some reason, it's not allowing me to promote her.
Oh, it looks like she is
Oh,
made it
she's
in.
in
And Ellen, go ahead and you can unmute yourself whenever you're ready and give your 2 minutes of public comment. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I live in the West Highlands neighborhood and I really appreciate trying to ride my bike along 29th. And I was very excited when I heard that we would be getting a protected bike lane, especially since I engage more with my community when I'm commuting on my bike to and from downtown. And I appreciate the ability to safely cut my greenhouse gas emissions and engage with my community while being able to cut my greenhouse gas emissions. And thank you so much. I appreciate the time to comment on the availability of this bike lane in my community.
Ellen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate your public comment. And Nadina, who do we have next?
We have Alejandra Castaneda. Sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong.
I see Alejandra has been promoted. Alejandra, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and you've got 2 minutes. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Alejandra, and I live in District 1 with my daughter Violeta, a middle school student. On November 2nd, together with some community members, we organized a rally on West 29th Avenue to demand DOTI follows its final design shared with the community on August 14th to add physical protection between the bike lanes and car travel lanes, except in front of a couple of commercial areas between Sheridan and Tennyson. We also started a petition, which has now received over 550 signatures, with 77% of the supporters coming from the 80211, 80212, and 80204 zip codes in and next to the project area. I am going to read some other comments that supporters included in the petition. Derek said, I live along this corridor and bike to work every day. Drivers regularly speed and drive unsafely, endangering cyclists, pedestrians, and also other drivers. DOTI and the city need to be making streets as safe as possible for everyone. For too long, Denver has prioritized parking space. The safer 29th is for those who are not in cars, the more people will opt to ride, walk, and roll to their destinations. Another one said, I live in the West Highland neighborhood and 29th Avenue is part of my daily commute and my preferred way to get into downtown. Children and the elderly deserve a safe bike mobility lane. Not everyone can drive. DOTI had a vision for 100% protected bike lanes, but public engagement with the community and business owners led to a reasonable compromise for protected bike lanes on the corridor, except for between Sheridan Boulevard and Xavier Street and Utica Street and Tennyson. Stick to the plan that the comprehensive community engagement process led us to. There are many areas of old bumpy sidewalks along 29th. A protected bike lane acts as a smoother, redundant sidewalk for those who use wheelchairs or mobility devices. Another one said, I've had several close calls with drivers speeding past me as I back along the street. I hope the city will prioritize safety for all road users over parking concerns and reverse course by completing the full protected bike lane. Another one said, Denver's adopted transportation plans and policies are very clear as to the modal priority for use on the public right-of-way. Pedestrians first, bikes, scooters, and public transit second, freight and deliverers third, and fourth, private automobiles. The city said the decision to scrap the protected bike lane on 29th west of Tennyson was to balance the needs of the community. This is in direct conflict with the city's adopted policy of prioritizing pedestrians, bikes, transit over private automobiles. The word priority means superiority in rank, position, or privilege, while the word balance means a state in which opposing forces are in equilibrium. The city's job is to proactively create an imbalance between the modes, prioritizing pedestrians, bikes, transit over cars. DOTI's failure to understand this and live by its own policies is infuriating. And I close comments from the people who signed the petition. Please listen to the entire community, dare to be bold, and deliver a solution based on best practices. Thank you.
Alejandra, thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you for your public comment. Nanita, who do we have next?
We have Heidi.
Heidi, are you? Oh, yep. I see Heidi Newhart over here. Heidi, once you're promoted, please, you've got 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Heidi Newhart and I live in West Colfax. I was here last month with fellow neighbors to talk about DOTI's recent decision to add car parking to the west side of the 14 block of Meade Street without notifying or communicating with the residents of West Colfax. I wanted to let this committee know that our mobility committee made a core request for documentation, studies, and processes that were used in determining the decision that went into adding another lane dedicated to cars on Meade Street. The only documentation that was produced was a 311 report submitted by DOTI staff and the other a work order generated from that 311 request. We also were sent the details of the email chain that we originated, which included DOTI internal communications around it. Internal communications revealed that our community planner and neighborhood designer were surprised at the community's pushback to adding more car infrastructure to our neighborhood. And that Kasser, who within hours of our original email going out, had offered to provide some funding support to find another non-car solution to slowing traffic on Meade Street, which DOTI declined. The Mobility Committee arranged for a bike tour of the area, for which we invited DOTI, giving them 2.5 weeks notice to come and ride with us to see the conditions in and around Meade Street. And not only did no one from DOTI show up, they didn't even RSVP. Not only does this behavior sow distrust and resentment in the communities they are meant to serve, it costs taxpayers time and money in planning and implementation when projects go sideways. West Colfax would love to have more human-centered design processes implemented for DOTI staff and community to spend time observing and interacting in our built environment to create problem statements that can lead to quick and tactical installations. Until then, we look forward to hearing more from this committee and from our DOTI representatives as to how they will be moving forward with community to resolve the conflict they're seeding in our neighborhood. Thanks so much.
Heidi, thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks for your public comment as well.
No problem.
Nidita, do we have anyone else giving comment this evening?
The last one, I'm not seeing his name right here on the
What was their name?
was Wilson Bryant.
Brian Wilson. Yeah, I also do not see Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson, if you happen to be in there under a different name, if you could raise your hand using the Zoom functionality, hitting the button at the bottom of your screen that says raise hand or react if you're on a mobile device. But I'm also not seeing Brian either. Nope. Okay. Well, great. That moves us on to our next item on the agenda, report from DOTI leadership. I see Director Ford's here. Nick is here as well. So I'll let you all take it away on who will be presenting tonight. Nick, you're on mute.
Nick, if you don't mind, I'll just start with a couple of comments, and I just wanted to say thank you to those who spoke. I absolutely see and understand and understand the frustration in the process that we had with West 29th as we work to, like we said, work to think about how we apply our policies, how we think about slow and safe streets, how we think actively about balancing also the quality of mobility in the area when it comes to access for our businesses, for residents, for others who are trying to move in the corridor, and trying to pull all of that together. It was not the perfect solution in how we handled all of the public involvement, and that was in large part due to me. And sort of as we continue to engage and work with community members and how we try to balance that. I think we all know that the solutions that we've looked at in the corridor include a significant focus on how to slow the corridor down in regards to thinking about speed cushions and otherwise, how we think about protecting pedestrians in the area with a number of different light solutions and crossing solutions, and how we also look at protecting our cyclists and creating a safer environment for them, which includes a series of protected bike lanes for 2/3 of the corridor. And then the section that that has raised the issues there, specifically from Tennyson to Sheridan, in which we had a solution at one point that looked at an unprotected bike lane, a protected bike lane, and unprotected bike lane. And it's that 3 blocks that has raised the issues as we looked at that. We acknowledge that in the course of this, the variety and the change of the nature of that corridor, not completely satisfied, frankly, with how the design of a traditional bike lane would extend over to Sheridan. And so asked for some different solutions that included then a traditional bike lane that actually has intersection improvements as you go across the entire south side, along with green carpet solutions from a visibility perspective that were not part of the original plan. So I say all of that, not to try to convince or to change anyone's mind per se on the solution that we were trying to drive, but understanding that we were trying to be expansive and continue to take in all community feedback and input. And again, I greatly appreciate the passion and the engagement of the community as we're talking about this, and the clarity of understanding that we're trying to drive as we look at how we think about safety and mobility on slowing these streets. As we go along, I wanted to share a couple of more things, sort of big picture, as we go through from a community perspective, from a DOTI side. Number one, we have a series of sessions today with you all to sit and talk about sustainability and climate, and our goals on how we continue to improve the reduction of single occupant vehicles in the city, and how we start thinking about encouraging people to think differently about how they travel, whether that be transit, whether it be scooter, whether it be walking, whether it be bicycling. And our team is going to talk to you a little bit about that today, because we are gathering and wanting input and feedback from everyone on how we might work to achieve a goal like that. And it's a goal that the mayor, as part of his broader goal setting for the city, regards to how do we create a vibrant and safe and affordable Denver is adding in climate and a recommitment, if you will, to broader GHG emissions reductions goals. And so you'll hear from our team as we talk about that. I'm really excited about that conversation. Just wanted to close out with, a lot that DOTI does to sort of work through a series of these things. On one hand, people will complain if we add parking into something as we think about a rapid response on how we try to improve safety and recognize that there are a lot of tools in our toolbox about how we think about streets and narrowing streets and how we sort of put all these pieces together. I realize on the other hand that we will have people, and I say complain in the nicest of way, I don't mean that in a pejorative manner, but thinking that we could do a different solution. Similarly, as I talk about these GHG goals, emissions reductions, and recognize the conversation that we're having about West 29th, I wanted to continue to laud that, we have some groundbreaking ceremonies coming up as part of how we continue to extend and expand our slow and safe street networks in regards to bikeways, how we are celebrating improvements that are being made to Federal Boulevard here with increasing improvements on sidewalk and pedestrian accessibility and safety. And know that we have a serious commitment to that from a safety policy perspective and other. So those are big pieces of what we want to do and want to accomplish as we try to sort of solve and work through this. And we will continue to do better in how we think about the public involvement, the public engagement of that, myself included. Lastly, speaking of public involvement and public engagement, we did want to share with you all some of the changes that we're making actually to a world that is not transportation, but I'm just going to bring it up ever so briefly. Alan, if you'll indulge me for 2 seconds.
Yeah,
We've made some changes recently in regards to how we better achieve our sustainability and our diversion goals, as well as how we think about our GHG emissions reduction goals. Frankly, how we improve our customer service when it comes to our solid waste programs. And since we know we touch probably every single one of you in your daily lives in regards to your trash and your recycling and your compost, just wanted to share for awareness for this particular group that we are looking at how we roll out citywide compost as quickly as we possibly can, accelerating it by actually 9 months. And this process will be paired with some changes in our service that will allow us to move back to biweekly recycling. But in doing so, we believe strongly that we will continue to improve and how we hit our diversion goals and overall approaches. There's a lot of data behind this that shows that we think we have the capacity to do this, given that our recycling bins are half full and the number of times that our trucks circle the city in regards to GHG emissions. But I just wanted to take the time with an audience here to share with you that we are looking at doing all of these changes here in early January and are really looking forward to continuing to amp up on how we do our diversion goals, as well as how we continue to improve our customer service for our solid waste programs. So those are some of the themes of things that we're thinking about: sustainability, diversion, how we think about single occupant reduction, how we think about customer service, and then how we also layer that with safety and a continuing commitment, if you will, to public involvement, and recognize that we have areas that we're continuing to work on as we go. So thank you, Alan, for letting me speak.
Yeah, thanks, Director Ford. It looks like we have a question from Director Lewis.
Yes.
Amy, considering it looks like DOTI's holding steadfast on this Highlands issue, the 3 blocks, considering our sidewalk project is starting in January, one, can we make that a priority to get those sidewalks fixed so that those bikes can use the sidewalk? And secondly, is there a possibility of widening to accommodate the bikes for that 3-block area? It seems like that would be a compromise to ensure that they have safety.
Widening the sidewalks or widening the
widening the side, well, first of all, fixing the sidewalks and widening if possible. So the primary is to get them fixed, because every person has testified said we like to use the sidewalks, but they're a freaking mess. The second one would be, if it's possible and we have the right of way, let's widen it out so both pedestrians and people with bikes could use it safely. So just a suggestion.
I appreciate that, and I'll actually take a note of that. If you could, Nick, help me with that with the sidewalk repair program, as if it is an area that we could look at repairs in, we can absolutely look at that. Thank you, Director Lewis.
Great, Jake. And I only have to call him Director Lewis for a couple more months now, since his
I know
term is coming to an end.
I feel odd with that, right?
But thanks for your service on the RTD board.
You might be calling me senator soon. That's all I'll say.
Ooh, all right then.
Jake, you have a question for Director Ford as well.
tough to follow groundbreaking potential news there, but I think I don't know. I want to echo the public comment a little bit on the 29th issue, because we've experienced some frustration with previous neighborhood plans in District 10. And we're recently told that when the community did present and the department confirmed the traffic counts were wrong on planning on Franklin and Pearl and Emerson, we were told that final designs were final. And they couldn't be made safer because the design was finalized. And so I think I'm just really struggling with the fact that we're only making final designs final when safety is at risk, but we're not making final designs final when somebody who, I mean, frankly, a lot of people who visibly have cars parked in their driveway and space for another car in their driveway are complaining about it. It just is, it's pretty hard to comprehend why we're making that exception only for parking and not for safety, because I don't think it's an exaggeration to say I've not seen us make that accommodation the other way in my entire history on this board. It made it hard as a board member to stand up to members of the community and say that made any sense. It just really did. I mean, I mean, we have a clear modal priority in the department. We've had a lot of communication about curbside demand management, and none of that computes with this decision at all. Like we've heard the word balance, but it just doesn't add up to something that balances with the actual goal. So I wish we'd revisit the 29th Street. I actually would like to reopen some revisiting on some bikeways in my district, given that final designs are not final, and we now have evidence that that they were proceeded with wrong traffic counts, and now that can be reopened. I think that like we should be looking at reopening some final designs where safety is possible, where previously we closed them because, you know, final meant final.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks, Jake. I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate them. Yeah, and not an easy discussion. I know you don't expect me to, you know, respond to every comment, but I do agree. You know, as the team was sort of sending out, there were some timing issues attached to the design and sort of trying to match it with the paving. And we were continuing to take public comment and premature sort of sharing the designs on the final side, and that is, like I said, entirely attached to me as I sort of kept that process moving, and we kept that process open in the discussions. And so yeah, it was not ideal and not how we would want to really do business, because you're right, it does shake that confidence and sort of shake that assumption in regards to sort of when we say something is final, that something is final.
Look, I think we have time for one more question. Look like June, you've got your hand raised, so go ahead.
Great. Hi, Director Ford. I know we've talked pretty extensively about 29th Avenue.
And I'm sorry I missed your call this weekend. I was traveling with my kids in LA, and so I didn't have a chance to get back to you. So
it's all right. I think Jake said it better than I could. Really, if a final decision isn't final, then that just opens up the department to, frankly, a lot of potential. It's going to take more time, more energy, and it's going to cause, I think, more consternation among everyone. Now, knowing that every single department decision on anything now, where it's like, this is our 100% design, now there's an open question of, is that truly 100% design? And I don't know any way to close that other than taking this decision back to 100% design and saying this was a mistake. Like, and that's hard, but in my mind, that's the only way that we don't set the precedent. But the actual comment I did want to really make and highlight was that I went on that ride with Heidi to sort of see what the conditions on West Colfax and Mead were. And, you know, she talks about Mead very well. I was really shocked by 14th Avenue. and the conditions on that roadway just south of Colfax, where a lot of people were using it as a cut through. And in terms of neighborhood context, to me, it felt like a 20-mile-per-hour, neighborhood street that should have always stops and all that. But there's basically no paint. The roadway condition is really poor, and people are speeding down that thing at like 30, 35 miles per hour and ignoring the stop signs. So that roadway is really dangerous. And especially given the context, and especially given Colfax is right there, like that should not be a roadway where cars are cutting through and are moving that fast, especially in a community that has already stated that they don't want to add additional safety hazards. So that's one thing I'll highlight. I think that that roadway in particular, just south of Colfax, really deserves a second look. And I really hope the DOTI community planner in question takes notice, right? Because that's a situation where we can enhance safety, honestly, I think pretty simply with some signage and paint. So I think it's
14, order for 14. Okay.
yes, I think it's worth taking a second look. But that's what I'll say. All just no questions, just comments.
Great. I think Nick, did you have anything else to add? And I know
Yeah,
Elena, you had a quick update as well on the survey.
And I think we touched on we had discussed about that. If there's anything else, I'm happy to do that at a subsequent meeting, but then just also call out, I think you all should have received a invitation to a event for some pedestrian safety infrastructure ribbon cutting here on Thursday, 10:30. Should all be in your inbox. If you don't have that, let me know on there. And Alan, I'm happy to defer to Elena for any other updates from us. Keep it moving.
Great. Thanks, Nick.
I'll be super quick. Elena McWhorter from DOTI. You all received from Nanita last week an email invite to take our shared scooter and bike survey. So you all may have seen that in the news recently as well. We have one of the highest riderships of shared scooters and bikes in the entire nation. And we want to hear from the public, whether you're a rider or not a rider, on how the program's doing, what's working well, and where we should focus on our efforts over the next few years. So I'll just pop that link into the chat again, so it's at everyone's fingertips, and it will be open through Thanksgiving. So if you need a hot topic of conversation as you eat your family dinner, here it is.
Great. Thanks so much, Elena. We'll be bringing back Elena at some point, hopefully in the next few months. We know scooters is a big topic for everybody for a variety of different reasons, but hope sometime in the coming months or year or so, we'll be talking about it in a little bit more depth. For those of you that do not have access to the chat, those of you that are attending, if you simply Google Denver Scooter Mobility Survey, you should be able to find a link on there, since we know our attendees don't have access to view the chat. Great. Thank you guys for the brief overview. And I'll turn it over to Nathan and Director Ford to talk a little bit more about sustainability goals for the department.
Thanks, Alan. Good to meet you all. Nathan Pope, Senior City Planner with the planning group here at DOTI. I'm excited to talk to you all today. Director Ford, did you want to give us any intro, or should I just jump into it?
I started the intro, but I do want to sort of add in. We're looking for your feedback and input and insight as we as a city start to look again at how we look at our overall GHG, greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals here at the city. And we know that there are several different components to that, one of which is around transportation. And that transportation is, how do we continue to encourage mode shift in regards to our general public, in regards to active transportation for biking, walking, rolling, will be a critical element to how we think about how we overall achieve our GHG emissions reduction goals. As we go through, we are actually in the process of setting goals related to that transportation, and setting goals in a way that would be achievable and something that we would work on how we actively move forward here in the next year or two to make some of those changes. And so that's what Nathan's going to talk to you guys about today, and we're really looking forward to your input and feedback. So take it away, Nate.
Thank you. I requested access to share my screen.
Nanita, Nick, are either you able to give?
There it goes.
There we go. Great.
Yeah.
Just need a little bit of patience. Great. Well, if someone could give me a thumbs up that's coming through, I'd appreciate it. But but really excited to talk about kind of some joint work that CASR and DOTI have just started kicking off, especially with the mayor's office as well, around a new mayoral priority, a new mayoral goal for 2025 around climate, and a sub goal of that being transportation and the intersection with climate. So Mayor Johnston is committed to making climate a priority in 2025 and beyond, and we're currently working on a plan for what that'll look like, especially as it relates to transportation. As part of that, we're doing some initial outreach with you all and some other groups to understand what you as key stakeholders are thinking and where we should go. At the beginning of next year, there'll be an announcement about this goal, and the top line of the goal is going to be around climate. Now, there's going to be a couple of sub goals, and one of those sub goals is going to be around transportation and climate and the intersection there, and that's what we're here to talk about today. It's really a collaboration between DOTI and CASR. I had a CASR colleague who was trying to log on, but it doesn't seem like it's working. But we're really working in close step with our CASR colleagues who are our climate experts. If you're not familiar with CASR, they're the Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency Office here in Denver, and really focused on climate action. And we're working with them to develop this goal. We have a little bit of time to understand what would be the most effective aspects to put together into a goal. That's what we're here to talk to you about today. I have a little activity that I'm going to try and run here at the end, but really it's just a way to spark the conversation to hear feedback from you all. Just a kind of reminder where we're at. CASR and DOTI have the ambitious goal of eliminating 100% of Denver's greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. With the interventions we've implemented so far, we are projected to reduce emissions by about 22% by 2025, but there's a bit of a gap. And so that's really what we're focusing on today, is closing that gap. As you know, we have a really strong foundation with Denver Moves Everyone, and that really tells us where we should be focusing. We know that transportation is the second largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in Denver, and that most of these emissions are coming from personal vehicles, from folks driving. And then there's this balance that we're trying to achieve between electrification and mode shift, right? These things go hand in hand, and they're both tools that we can use, both approaches we can take to reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. And we're really trying to find that balance between those two initiatives. But in Denver Moves Everyone, these were the two strategies that were identified as having the greatest impact to meet our sustainability goals. So that's a little bit of the background, a little bit of the foundation we're standing on with Denver Moves Everyone. But now I want to talk about like our goal and how the strategies that are going to come behind it. We're developing this sub goal today that's going to live under climate. We're building from that foundation that DOTI and CASR and Denver Moves Everyone set up. We're doing some data deep dives and really looking closely with our peer cities and doing some best practice research to see what peer cities are doing, but what are ambitious cities doing as well, places like Paris, et cetera, to reduce their transportation related greenhouse gas emissions. And then we're talking to you all, the local experts, on what you think would make the most sense. We also talk to all of our TMAs and our partner agencies, and then we stop by MPAC and MBAC as well. This is going to be what we put together, what we develop is going to be a SMART goal. It's going to fit in that SMART goal framework, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So it's going to be this really achievable, really clear context to the goal as well. Timeline and funding are the natural next questions. The goal is going to be formally announced in early 2025. The goal will be around climate, and then we'll have the transportation sub-goal. Implementation will then start immediately afterwards, and we're looking at really an initial 2-year time frame to make some significant progress, but understanding that these changes are going to take a longer view as well. We're focusing in on that 2 years to start, but looking at the long term as well. Funding and resources are really going to kind of depend up on where we land and what goal we're specifically looking at and what type of strategies come along with that. So hasn't been determined yet, but want to set expectations that it's going to match what the goal is put together as. Some considerations, things that we're talking about over the past month or so, and we'll continue to talk about is, hey, can we start small and scale up? What is the feasibility of these things? Metrics and measuring, it's really tough to measure some of these things. What can we focus in on? Is there certain modes that we should be really focused on as being most important? And then our audience and geography are questions that I want to ask you all about today. So I have a little activity. It's a Mentimeter activity, but before we get there, any quick questions for folks have? Does that make any sense? I saw there was a couple of things in the chat.
Nathan, I think the things in the chat were related to previous conversations, so no questions yet in the chat. We do have a question from Director Lewis, though. and June is second in the queue.
Hey Nathan, this is Jamie Lewis. I got an email today stating that the U.S. Department of Transportation is delaying the approval of second round grants for electrification, and it's up to like $800 million. And I noticed that electrification of our fleets is on one of the goals. So I'm just curious if that possible cutback would affect our efforts.
I can definitely find that out for you, Director Lewis. I think with the news breaking today, we probably don't know yet, but I think it's something worth flagging, and that'll impact that other sub goal around fleet electrification. So let me talk to our CASR colleagues and see what their thoughts are, and get back to you.
Okay, I just sent the email to Alan, so if Alan can forward it to you guys, that'd be
Perfect.
great. Thank you.
June, go ahead.
So in this year's budget, CASR is dedicating $13.4 million to electric vehicles, both in charging and fleet electrification. They're dedicating zero for active transportation infrastructure. And in the DOTI budget, only $2.2 million of our general fund expenditures there are for anything related to bike infrastructure. We've got the sidewalk funding, but like looking at the resources that were just voted upon by council, it's all for electric vehicles for the most part, right? Like, and there's very little for the infrastructure that we do know actually gets people to change modes. Because, like, if you don't have a safe way to get to where you got to go, you're not going to go, regardless of if it's convenient, right? So, like, funding and resources to be determined, but that's the whole deal, right? Like, if we don't have resources for implementation, a great planning effort's a great planning effort, but we also just saw resources for the bike lane on 29th. We just saw that facility get turned from a higher comfort to a lower comfort facility. And we know that's counterproductive to these mode shift goals that the department is working towards. So do you know where these resources are going to come from? Can you point to somewhere in this next year's budget? Like, are we going to get commitments that next year's budget is going to be focused more on sustainable transportation? Like, I'm just kind of confused. Where are we getting the money from?
Yeah, excuse me. I can't point to specifics right now. It's still this is all coming together fairly rapidly, but I think it's a variety of different places that we could pull from, to my understanding. And I think I want to hold on to that question, and I think you'll be able to provide some feedback on that here in the activity. But yeah, it's a variety of sources, to my understanding. I think Jamie's hand's up from his previous question, Director Lewis's, so I'm going to keep going. And we have a couple of questions with you all to refine our focus, right? There's so many places we could start on this, and so many places that we already have started on that we could build off of, but really want to take your expert opinions and expert thoughts on how we should grow it. So I have a Mentimeter link that I'll drop in the chat, and I think we really just want to focus on the DOTI Advisory Board folks for this. It's really just a way to start a conversation. So I have 6 questions for you. We'll take 5 minutes to go through them quickly, and then we'll go through and review the responses together. And really, this is just a tool to start the conversation. So appreciate that we want to get, we have a lot on the agenda today. So don't worry if you feel like you're rushing through these questions. I just jumped that in the link, but essentially we're trying to find, what's the best balance between some of those different trade-offs for GHG and electrification and mode shift. That's the first question. The second one is around audience. Is there a particular audience that you think we should be really focused on? Same with geography and types of trips. Are there certain trips that you think we should be focused on over others? Is there a top strategy or initiative that you think we should be focused on to meet these goals? And then this is something that I'm personally passionate about. I hate saying alternative modes of transportation because they shouldn't be the alternative. Is there another word or term that you all are using to describe those combination of walking, biking, rolling, taking transit, carpooling, those more sustainable transportation options? Is there a term that you favor that you think would be good that we should start talking about in the framework of these goals? So go ahead and click on the link in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and let's take maybe 3 minutes. Not the best television, I understand, but just to get some ideas out on paper, and then I'll bring up the results and ask you all for your feedback and why you picked what you did. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Cool. And if you have questions on the questions or the Mentimeter, please let me know. Happy to answer those while you're digging in. Oh, this is the part where I said I was going to get some hold music. I was going to get some elevator music to fill the awkward silence, but you might just have to suffer through for a minute.
Kind of hard to choose which trips to focus on because these are all very important to focus on.
If you had to prioritize some of those, which would be most interested in, and understanding that those are not mutually exclusive, right? You can, there's short trips that are commute trips and there's long trips that are commute trips. So this is just a way to get some ideas out on paper. Let's see, I see about 9 folks responding to the first question. Alan, do you have a feeling for how many folks are here today on the board who we should be expecting to respond to this?
We have around, I think, 12 or 13 folks. Gary, is that about right ballpark? And you're still muted, by the way, Gary. But I'm Nathan, while Gary's working on unmuting. I see a 10 plus 2, yeah, 12. Okay, thanks, Gary. I anticipate that not everyone might be in an accessible place to take the survey, so that sounds about right.
No, it's great. I'll wait till there's about 10 or so on each question, and don't feel bad if you don't get to them all. We want to have a conversation. Let's take maybe another minute. I see folks are getting to the end now. There's 6 questions in total. Okay, put your last thought in, and then this is really where I want to have a conversation. First question, that balance that we're trying to strike, there's definitely numbers behind this, but I think this is just a good way to start thinking about, mode shift versus electrification. Where are folks thinking these days? And it seems folks are definitely leaning more towards mode shift, which is definitely where we are leaning for this initiative as well. Anyone want to speak to how they broke this down?
I am more than happy to speak on literally every single part of this. I will say that on a dollar per dollar basis, electric vehicles still have pretty high life cycle emissions, not as high as internal combustion engines, but they're still relatively high ones. So they need to be used a lot more in order for those emissions to be sort of mitigated, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So meanwhile, something like a bike or something like a transit vehicle, if you shift someone onto that, it's just a direct saving instead of needing to sort of overcome this deficit. Plus, there are other additional externalities that shifting people into those modes do help. In addition, electrification is pretty expensive, all things considered, right? Like on a per vehicle basis, charging stations are relatively affordable and cost effective, but especially purchasing vehicles, both for private consumers and for the government, is like pretty expensive. And everything I weigh in this is like, if we spend $1 here, that's $1 we can't spend here.
Yeah.
So we got to measure every single solution by carbon abatement per dollar. So, and it's got to be a life cycle, right? So that's how I think we do the apples to apples comparison in transportation emissions to get the largest reduction, largest bang for our buck, because we don't have enough money to just throw it at the problem and see what sticks,
Great. Yep. Appreciate that feedback. And our partners at CASA are really good at coming up with those, per dollar metrics. So appreciate that feedback. Alan, I'll just call on folks with their hands.
Yeah. Thanks, Nathan. So I just kind of want to echo what June said, a little bit of the chat around electrification and seeing where the budgets are headed reminds me of a talk I heard on clean coal a few years ago, right? Like it's definitely a harm reduction measure, right? With I think electrification is, and it's certainly a path forward, but it's not the most efficient, economical, or equitable path. And I think I just like to echo what June said, and that most of the CASR budget right now, most of the city budget is focused on more on electrification, and very little is focused on mode shift, which I think is truly going to give us our best returns for a more sustainable climate perspective. So just wanted to echo those thoughts as well.
Yeah, Jake.
I just wanted to say I'm not sure they're totally in conflict. I think that the most popular electric vehicle in the country is an e-bike, and it's not even close. Like they just absolutely lap electric cars. So when you look at sales, and actually even just models, I know one of the electric bikes like ranks higher than most of the Teslas as an EV. So I think that if we're thinking about how to electrify, the correct answer is to mode shift so that we can electrify. And I think that that gets missed in this conversation a lot. And it's, we see UPS and FedEx trying a lot of e-bike carrier deliveries because it lowers their costs. So I think I don't want to like box electrification out of mode shift. I think they're pretty interrelated when we consider the fact that most EVs are bikes.
Great point. Love it. Thanks, Jake. I'm taking notes over here. If you see me looking down, that's because I'm taking notes. Andy.
And I'll just chime in for electrification. I completely agree with June and Alan, but I'll also say getting people to change behavior is hard. And in a climate emergency where time is very much of the essence, not trying to rely on people to make major changes to their behavior and maybe smaller ones in some cases. That'll be all I'll say, just to speak up for the electrification there. Thanks.
Appreciate that. I'm going to keep us moving just so we have time to talk about all of these. Interesting. Residents came out on top in this ranking question. Anyone want to speak to why they picked here, or feel free to type in the chat too. I'll make sure to go through and get that afterwards.
They're the majority of trips.
Somebody put other. Did we say what other was?
No, I think that was me, and it was just because I ranked all of them. I didn't have another.
That's great.
Same.
Okay. Going once. Geography, interesting. Citywide, folks are thinking we should focus citywide or on transit corridors. Tell me, anybody have any strong thoughts there that they want to share?
Oh, on citywide, build a network, people will use the network, right? People live citywide, they work citywide. So if we want to really make an impact in the entire city, if we want to reduce 100% of emissions by 2040, that's the entire city.
Yeah, thanks, June. Joe.
Yeah, well, my comment is that when we try to put roads on diets, and I like the word put on diets, it seems like all we're doing is offering a different route. So there's a to be a diet, there's a bowl of candy right next to where you are. So you'll go over to 14th instead of Colfax. And so that's why just transit corridors aren't as important as the whole citywide to get everything to work together. And I realize that's a harder thing to do, but just concentrating on transit corridors won't really dissuade people from going elsewhere. So that's my thoughts.
Great, thanks. Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when you look at the majority of trips in people's lives, they're in their own neighborhood typically. Like, people from Westwood might commute to downtown from work, but their trip to the grocery store, their trip to the barber, their trip to the whatever, like those are short distances. And so if we don't have coverage in those neighborhoods, like it really doesn't matter. I think so often in transportation we focus on commutes, and we actually forget that's not a really dominant form of travel. It's kind of a minority.
Well, that perfect segue. Oh, no, Danielle, go for it.
Sorry, I kind of come in between the two, I think, in that I'm in the East Colfax neighborhood, and we don't have a grocery store in our neighborhood. We don't have a library. We don't have a rec center. So we literally can't do anything within our neighborhood except live where we are. And so I was more on the transit corridor, a little between the two, because we need to have some focus on getting to some of those core places on our side of the city.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That makes sense. I'm going to take us on to the next one. Interesting. Commute trips were top choice here. Anyone want to speak to why they think commute trips is where we should be a focus, or why they picked any of these other ones?
I picked short trips because 60% of trips are within 3 miles of the home. Most bang
And
for the buck.
and therefore they're the easiest ones to flip. Yeah.
Yep.
I think I liked commute trips on there just because we do then have the opportunity to work with larger employers, in the district, and get some of them on board, whether it's offering more transit passes, et cetera, offering benefits to their employees to not just drive themselves. So that's what appealed about commute trips to me.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
throw
thanks,
out there.
Adrian.
Commute trips tend to be fewer trips. Oh, sorry, Alan, go for it.
So I was going to say, just a quick reminder, we're 10 minutes behind, so if folks could feel welcome to give remarks, but keep them brief if you don't mind. But you can go ahead, June. Feel welcome to chime in. I don't want to squash your comment.
Behind time.
I
I could
appreciate
talk
the
about this
flag.
for like 5 hours.
I won't dwell on this. I'll go back in. Active transportation. People like active transportation. Okay, that's good to know. Trip combining multimodal, community, sustainable. Great. These are awesome. I'll dig into those. And then some strategies. Awesome. Cool. I will dig into these as well. Thank you guys for the feedback. The conversation's very helpful. Next steps for us are. Is my screen still coming through?
Yep.
Nice. If you please reach out to me, I'll put my email in the chat. If there's anything you think we missed, I'm really, really excited. You know, if you have any big revelations over the weekend or over the week of other things around this, please reach out. That's your homework to keep thinking about this. And then we're going to try and have a big announcement in early 2025 around this goal. And we'll be in touch before then with you all to talk a little bit more about that. But really appreciate the time and the brainstorming and the brain dump. It's really helpful as we move forward with this. So I'll wrap it up there, and unless there's any other questions.
No questions? Great. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us today. Director Ford, thank you for joining us as well. We really appreciate both of your abilities to engage with not only the board, with community. So thank you both for speaking on this topic.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Next on the lineup, you can see my background. It's BRT night. I've got a picture of one of the renderings of the Colfax BRT. So we're really excited to have David here. And it looks like I see Jonathan as well with a BRT. So I'm guessing you might be speaking as well. But thank you all so much for joining us tonight to talk about Colfax and federal BRT this evening. And feel welcome to take it away.
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead. I do have a presentation ready to give an update on Colfax BRT. And hello, everybody. My name's Jonathan Stewart. I'm the project director for the East Colfax BRT project. So I'll go over Colfax BRT. I'll try and shorten it to make up some time for y'all. And David is here to talk about federal BRT if you have specific questions regarding federal BRT. So first, I'm going to figure out how to share my screen. Let's see here.
You should have privileges. I see you listed as a co-host. So if you hit that green button at the bottom, you should be good to go.
Okay. How's that?
Looks great.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, first, really what I want to go over is just quickly why we're doing the project as just a reminder, and then where it is, and then kind of talk about where we are in the project right now and what construction is going to look like. So there are a lot of benefits to doing bus rapid transit along Colfax. The why we're doing this, it has so many benefits. It really is the best way for us to add capacity to move more people east and west across the corridor. And it also increases the safety. Colfax is one of the most dangerous streets in our network. It also has a variety of economic benefits. We expect to see increased economic activity from having more people due to an increase in ridership. And also the environmental benefits. That's been discussed a lot already tonight, but we expect to see some significant environmental benefits from this too. If we hit our ridership goals of a 24% increase in ridership, that would translate to 77,000 pounds of CO2 reduced per year. This project also has a close alignment with the mayor's priorities as well. Vibrant, affordable, and safe Denver. As far as vibrancy, it makes for more walkable and connected neighborhoods. There's a lot of work that we're doing. If you look at Alan's background there, you can see that we're making it easier to cross Colfax. We're also adding trees and widening sidewalks along there. It also makes Denver more affordable by providing more affordable transportation options. And there's the safety factor of trying to reduce crashes along this corridor as well. Here's just a quick reminder of the scope of the project. It starts at Denver Union Station, then shifts on to Colfax over at Civic Center. And that is utilizing existing infrastructure. So no construction proposed in that area. The main construction is proposed in the blue and the orange area. In the blue area, that's where we will have center running BRT. So there will be 2 lanes dedicated for buses only, and the bus stations will be moved from the side of the street to the center of the roadway. And then once we get to Yosemite, it moves back to the side of the street. The stations will be moved over to the stations will still be at the side of the street rather, and it'll be in mixed traffic in the orange area as well. And that is also in the city of Aurora. So here's just an overview of what the bus stations will look like. I wanted to really highlight that we'll be widening sidewalks, having enhanced bike and pedestrian crossings at the bus stations, as well as over 150 trees that are going to be planted along this corridor as well as some pedestrian lighting to make it easier and more safe to walk at night as well. Here's another rendering of what the bus stations will look like. Gives you kind of a more close-up view of what this will look like. Also to kind of highlight this big steel arch canopy is kind of the signature of the station. Also, the canopy that's above along the arch is also going to have artwork. 1% of the construction of the project in Denver has to be dedicated towards public art. That public art is going to be on the glass canopies above the stations at all the stations. So I think that's going to be really cool too. So where are we in the project? We did a groundbreaking on October 4th. A groundbreaking celebration occurred then. We started construction about 2 weeks ago on segment 1. It's starting slowly because mostly what we're doing is the contractor is doing some subsurface exploration now, making sure they know exactly where those underground utilities are so we don't run into any surprises when we do actually start digging. And so this also kind of shows how the construction is going to be broken up into 5 different segments. Segment 1 is really only 3 stations. It's the Pennsylvania, the Downing, and the Park Avenue stations. Is going to be where most of the construction is occurring this fall. And then early next year, maybe around the new year, we'll start working on segment 2. And that's another 3 stations at Josephine, at Fillmore, and at Madison. And so those 2 segments is where most of the construction is going to occur over the next year until we open up segment 3 at the end of 2025. And so, yeah, that's going to be what's happening with construction. So right now we're doing some subsurface investigations. We're starting to set up the closure for phase 1 of segment 1. And I think I have a slide for that right here. Yeah, here we go. So if you look on the bottom left there, this is going to be a more kind of surgical operation than closing the whole roadway. We're not going to do that because really the intent is to keep 2 lanes of traffic running at all times. And so what's going to be happening and what's happening right now this week is we're setting up the closure for phase 1 of segment 1. And that's on the south side of the street only. And that's to build the sidewalks and do the curb ramps and install the trees on one side of the street only. And then we'll install one of the bus stations. The bus stations along the center running are in pairs. And so we'll install one of the pairs in phase 1. And then once that work is complete, it'll flop over and we'll close on the north side of the street and do the streetscaping work on the north side of the street at that point. And then once that work is complete, then we'll close down the center of the roadway and finish out the bus stations at that point. And that would be to add the bells and whistles, the video cameras, lighting, fare collection equipment, things of that nature would be happening in phase 3. Yeah. Here's another detail of what the first closure is going to look like. So this is from Broadway to Pearl Street. As you can see, it's on the south side of the street. We have lane closures along the south side of the street, but always keeping business access open, prioritizing business access, also keeping traffic moving in both directions at all times. And also, one last thing, there will be accommodations for the 15 and the 15L RTD's bus lines there. So those will continue to operate continuously during construction. And when the BRT formally opens up, the 15 and the 15L will be going away. And at that point, it'll be called the Colfax Links, which is at the end of this project, which we expect to happen at the end of 2027 is when we'll achieve substantial completion. I did get a request to talk about the We Back the Facts campaign, so I did want to mention that and talk a little bit about that. This is a social media campaign that we're supporting to help encourage people to continue to access businesses along the corridor during construction. We're very mindful of maintaining that access to businesses along this corridor, knowing that most of the businesses along here are small businesses, therefore more vulnerable to something like a closure for construction, which is why we want to keep both lanes of traffic open at all times and keep the sidewalks open so everybody can get to those businesses. So we officially launched the campaign on October 4th. And really what it is to try and get this trending on social media. If you go to a business and take a picture on your social media there and do a hashtag We Back the Facts, you're automatically entered into a drawing. And we do those monthly where you can get what we're calling Colfax Bucks. So I think the last drawing was for 50 Colfax Bucks, and that's $50 US that you can spend on a business on Colfax. And so that's to encourage more people to come down and spend more money along this very important corridor for the city. Okay, so that's all that I had on Colfax BRT. Are there any questions?
June, I see you first in the queue. Go ahead.
Very quickly, not about the project. I love the project. The new federal administration is probably not going to be super friendly to transit. like, can we get, I don't know what all the funding legal situation is on the back end, but like, is the funding for this project assured? Like, can it not be retracted?
Great question. And I can assure you that this project has been fully funded as of, let's see, I think it was Monday was when we got our execution of our Small Starts grant. So the full $150 million that we've received from FTA, that is in the bank. And so at this point, I'm I'm not going to say never, but it would start a lawsuit if FTA withdrew funding at this point after committing the funding. It would be an unprecedented event. So I feel comfortable, and FTA also feels comfortable that this money is fully committed.
Great question. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fully in favor of this project, and I think I and Jake and June were all at the groundbreaking. It was really fascinating to do that and see the great support for everybody. But I'm representing District 5, which is adjacent to Colfax and has 13th and 14th in it, and everybody is worried as what their traffic is going to do. 13th and 14th are already problematic. There have been several accidents there. And I don't see, what do your studies show of what's going to happen to those streets? And I also have a question that if you're only 2 lanes open and you're running the buses, then the chance of getting caught behind a bus you're going to get caught behind the bus when you're going down. So I don't know how effective it'll be for transportation other than buses. So what's being done about that, if anything? And what should I tell my neighbors that they're going to have for the next 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of heard 2 questions. What's happening on 13th and 14th? And then also, what are the buses going to do on Colfax themselves? Is that correct? Yeah, okay. So I'll just talk about the buses first because that's a lot quicker. And there will be pullouts for the 15 and the 15L within the closure area. So you won't get caught behind a bus because they will have a little area to pull out that's not in the single lane moving in each direction. So that will help alleviate that problem there. Now,
Very good. Thanks.
Regarding 13th and 14th Avenues, as I think most people know, that's been a problem that's been steadily building for decades at this point. And so we did look at it closely. We did help pay for a safety study along those corridors, 13th, 14th, also 16th, 17th, and 18th as well. We looked at those. And so there is an increase in traffic and the travel times do slow a little bit. But really, it's what we're gaining is we're gaining up to 30 minutes in travel time savings using the bus along this corridor, and the cost in car travel time is about 1 minute per mile. So utilizing the average trip, which is 3 miles, that causes a delay in your car trip of about 3 minutes. Now, the experience for others is really that delay is going to be only during rush hour and only if you're going in the direction that rush hour is moving. As most of us know, everybody's trying to get into downtown in the morning and everybody's trying to get out of downtown in the evening. So if you're moving in that direction during rush hour, that's when you'll experience that delay. At other times, we do not expect a major jump in traffic volumes along those streets. And that's not to say that we do not, we are cognizant that there are problems on 13th and 14th, but there's multiple problems there, right? Because there's high traffic volumes at this rush hour period. But really what I've heard from most residents is the concern at late at night when there's no traffic on there of people driving very, very fast. And so I think that's a problem that DOTI is looking at separately. It's being supported by this safety study that's being worked on as well. And so DOTI is putting together a plan for that problem of excessive speeding when there's no traffic on the roadway. I think that that's a little bit different than concerns about too much traffic on the roadway caused because there's going to be a bus on Colfax. So it's kind of a twofold problem there. Does that help
yeah,
answer your
yeah,
question,
that
Joe?
helps. I think that's
Okay.
great. But is there any interim plan if it gets started and there is a mess on 13th and 14th, that you will come back and look at it again? Just like we're saying, we don't know that you've done studies, but they're only studies and they're not really based on, as close as you can get to reality. But if reality proves different, are you able to kind of relook at that situation? Or is DOTI going to look at that situation?
Absolutely. We're going to be looking at that on a continual basis. So we'll be looking for hotspots during construction that are caused by the construction, and those we can address quickly. I think the longer term is what is it going to look like once construction is complete? And we'll be looking at that point again. We'll look at that again in 2027. But we also hope to have a plan for the excessive speeding before 2027. So that is something that DOTI is prioritizing sooner than that. I don't know what those solutions are as of yet, but I know that DOTI is looking at it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Jake, you're next.
I'm very excited to hear about those solutions, but I think that I represent the district that I'll call Phase 1 district, and just a couple questions. I think one, well, for everyone, they're really going out there. I've seen them, but will the access to the sidewalks be maintained throughout the project, or at least, I guess I should say, will pedestrian access be maintained? And then alternatively, one other question was, I have gotten questions about whether the 15 and 15L will drive in the Phase 1 lanes when they're completed, but pre-Colfax links.
So, okay, I might ask for,
Yeah.
Okay, tell me your first question again. Sorry, I got.
Well, pedestrian access on both sides of Colfax be maintained.
Absolutely, 100%. That will continue. And that's why we have the Back the Facts campaign, to let people know that those sidewalks are open, that the business access is maintained. So let's talk a little more detail about your other question about the buses once segment 1 is complete. What was that question again?
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of questions about so we're in this Phase 1, we're gonna live through all this construction, then the construction's gonna be done and it'll be 1.5 to 2 years before Colfax Links opens, with that branding and that operation. Will the buses, the 15 and 15L, be able to take advantage of the fact that there's bus-only lanes on Colfax in the short term? I know there's some weird things about it's not really the experience you want people to expect with Colfax BRT, so I understand that that's a bit of a complex situation.
Yeah, so we do plan on utilizing the center stations on a temporary basis before the Colfax Links formally opens up. And we will be able to use portions of those bus-only lanes after the construction is complete. I can't guarantee that we'll be able to use all of them at this point. And another thing that we're trying to figure out if we can do, we don't have the answer yet, is if we can open up the BRT in phases. And so I don't have an answer for that yet, but I can tell you that we'll use the center running stations on a temporary basis before BRT formally opens.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Danielle.
Hey, thanks. Sorry to come on video, but mine's going to be fairly similar to Joe, or an extension to Joe's comments, in that I'm District 8. So I have both north and south of Colfax. So 13th, 14th, 16th, 17th, 18th are all massive concerns for us. So per what you spoke to before, how can we access the safety study and see what that shows? And then how should we be communicating as we see hotspots and accidents? Because our area is a little different in that we don't have as much traffic on those streets, but we have definitely the extreme speeds that are major concerns and accidents. So twofold. One, how can we access the safety study? And two, how should we be communicating as we see hotspots and issues moving forward?
Sure. So the safety study will be a public document once it's finalized. My understanding is it's still in draft form right now, but once it's completed, it's going to be a public document. We'll post a link to it on the Colfax BRT website, which is denvergov.org/ColfaxBRT. There's a lot of information about the project and in general along there as well. You can get construction updates, et cetera, et cetera. But we will be posting a link to that safety study once it's finalized and released. So I expect that to happen soon. And once it does, that link will be available. And tell me your second question again.
Sorry, no problem. How should we be communicating back as we see changes in our communities when we see issues and things like that to bring attention to potential hotspots or future issues?
Yeah, so one thing that we did do that was done for the safety study was there was a period of time, I think it was maybe like 6 to 9 months, where we had a map posted on the website, which kind of asked for people to put a pin marker on the map and tell us what kind of issues you're seeing. And it got a ton of feedback. So I want to say that we had something like 2,000 or 3,000 comments. And this was from Broadway to Yosemite, from 13th to 18th. And throughout that area, we received a ton of comments and a lot of great ideas on solutions as well in those comments that were placed as pins on a map. And so we did make that effort. I think as far as new hotspots that are identified, I think that you could still use the traditional paths, which would be you can make a 311 call. You can make a call into Colfax BRT, and we'll make sure that it gets to the right place as well. But the public comment period for that safety study is closed as we're trying to get that study finalized and get it out.
I'll chime in since I don't see anybody else chatting right now, and a little bit of a shift from Colfax BRT to federal BRT. I think just want to say congratulate the department, the leadership, everybody on Colfax BRT. I think it's really exciting project, and only I think one of 6 nationally coming up here in the next few years. So Denver is definitely at the forefront, and I think it's going to really show everybody what's possible with BRT. So Jonathan, David, thank you all for your leadership on this. It's really exciting. And I think part of that is we've seen the potential for this. Over here in North Denver, a few concerns I've heard from transit writers over here is around the federal BRT essentially stopping and being a shared usage lane between 20th Avenue and 50th Avenue in North Denver. And so the concern over here is like, hey, we have a lot of transit riders over here. It's not only going to impact them, but also impact transit riders on either side of that corridor. And I know ultimately it's a CDOT project, but certainly DOTI has influence over it inside of city limits. So I was wondering, that's question number 1 that I've kind of heard that folks wanted to hear from the department on. And then question number 2 was, if it's widened to add a 3rd lane for buses, that makes federal a little bit more dangerous too, right? It's currently our most deadly stretch of road in North Denver, so potentially taking away from the safety project. So would love to get your all's thoughts on those 2 points for the community.
Sure. David Kretzinger, Transit Director. Thanks for the question, Alan. So 20th to 50th is a section of Federal Boulevard that's got a lot of differing opinions from the community. Some folks leaning more transit advocacy side who are saying if we don't get a full bus lane, it's substandard, and others saying, hey, this is our neighborhood. Don't neck us down to only one lane of general purpose traffic. So Colfax set the precedent that you can mix and match a little bit. So as John was saying, in Aurora, it goes back to side running in that location and mixed flow traffic. We are going to be urging CDOT to look at more intersections where there could be queue jumps or things like that that provide that transit travel time savings. Without necessarily dedicating 30 blocks of a lane to the bus. So that maybe is a middle solution. Community is going to be involved no matter what. So we're not making decisions for the community. We're making decisions with the community, and happy to have the community along with us in that decision-making process. In other parts of the corridor, there's quote unquote widening being considered, but we're not talking about adding whole lanes. We're talking about inching the curb out a couple of feet so that all the lanes have more standard widths. There are portions of South Federal where the curb lane is 9.5 feet wide, and it's not sufficient for the bus even today. A bus mirror to mirror is 10 feet. So a 9.5 foot wide lane just really is substandard. And if we could push that out to 10 feet or 11 feet, those kinds of widening are being considered, but not the widening of adding a whole additional lane anywhere in the corridor.
Great, David. Thank you so much for those thoughts. As DOTI goes through and kind of considers next steps and options, I just you all have presented an amazing option for kind of, Colfax, and I hope the department will consider dedicated BRT from 20th to 50th, not only from a, equity standpoint. Most of the folks on that line are, working class folks of color, just from my own personal observations, but from a sustainability standpoint, we look at having the transit as our highest point of the pyramid of prioritization with our transit efforts. And I hope the department, I know change is hard. I know folks in our neighborhood and elsewhere will be upset when we dedicate car lanes to bus lanes, but I sincerely hope we'll uphold our Denver Moves 2050 goals and consider that. So thank you for your thoughts. I appreciate that.
Appreciate the question. Thank you.
Yeah. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I had a comment on the aesthetics. And it was I was a little disappointed. I know the architects who did the Colfax, it really didn't represent Colfax. So it just, could go anywhere in the world. So I'm hoping that when you do the federal one, it's more tied to federal. Federal has a lot of history and all that. And you could try to look at it, making it, and I don't want to see all these the same all over the city. That's just my comment. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Joe, for the comment. And yeah, each corridor, the community input will drive the design. The design for Colfax turned out the way that it did, with the most support from the community, but that doesn't mean everybody got everything that they wanted. So it will probably be similar in the Federal and Colorado Boulevard corridors, that not everybody gets everything they asked for. But that's the challenge of a public process, and definitely trying to be community sensitive in Federal, knowing that there are multiple very strong corridor identities in the Federal corridor to recognize that and play to that. At least that's what the community has asked for so far.
Well, gentlemen, thank you again for your leadership on BRT in Denver. This is really exciting. I think folks want this sooner rather than later, and appreciate that DOTI's also figured out how to speed this implementation up as well. So thanks for your time today. We'll move along. We have a Council District 8 update. Maggie, sorry for running a bit late. We've went from 10 minutes behind schedule to 8 minutes behind schedule, trying to make up a little bit of time for you. So we're excited to hear about your update on Council District 8.
Awesome. I like it. It's like we were in the jet stream on our way to Europe, right? So hey everyone, my name is Maggie. I am the community designer for districts 8, 9, and 11. I am going to see if I can share my screen here so you guys can see my presentation. Looks like it's going to come up here. Can I get a thumbs up from Alan if that's showing there? Perfect. Even a
Looks
double
great.
thumbs up. I love it. So what I wanted to start out with was just, I know this is a group that I have presented in front of once before. We presented on some of those District 11 projects a while back, but I wanted to make sure that I introduce myself just one more time for folks who weren't around. So I have been working in the bicycle and pedestrian workspace for a number of years. That is my background. I actually came from Washington, D.C. originally, working on the Safe Routes to School program. So bicycle and pedestrian work near and dear to my heart. So really happy to hear the great support we're getting for bikes and peds from the DOTI Advisory Board. Previously, I worked as a city council aide. So I was in District 7 with Councilman Jolan Clark, who's now our director of parks. So if you've ever met Jolan before, he's a good dude, and learned a lot about how the city works working for him. And then in 2023, that January, so coming up on 2 years ago, I transitioned over to DOTI, working in the community design role for districts 8, 9, and 11. And so I've lived in Denver, Northeast Denver, for almost 20 years. I live in the Clayton neighborhood. Definitely see a lot of these projects on the ground. Looking forward to my first big kind of night commute in a long time, since we don't come down to the office much anymore. That'll be great. So anyway, that's me and my son. And then also me and my son, I volunteer for our plow reserves. We were deployed last weekend and then told, just kidding, don't go out. The roads didn't get as sloppy as we thought they were, but typically I'm out plowing Park Hill and Central Park. So if you see me out there on those snowy days, give me a wave. Just to kind of reinforce what the community design role is, we're the council liaison to transportation implementation. It's kind of a key word here. We are the folks who are putting things down on the ground, getting it done. So it's been planned, it's been designed, and we are doing construction out in community, making sure that things go smoothly. We also work internally with our DOTI partners to sort of help them with community outreach. So we'll work with our plan teams, we'll work with our design teams as they are engaging community, sort of give them some of the finer points on how we have found best to engage with communities in our council district. We do handle traffic engineering escalations. So folks who are reaching out to 311 about an issue, and either it's a really complicated issue and it needs some more context, or we have to work through really engineering limitations on those things. I'll work with folks on that. Herding the cats between projects. You know, I think this is a classic example. We've got BRT, we've got a whole bunch of different things going on in Northeast Denver right now. And you'll see in some of our projects how that overlap happens. And then you've seen some of our other team members here in the past, and we'll see them again in the future. So you may also see our planning teams, our Office of Community and Business Engagement, solid waste teams, parking, street maintenance, and our ops teams, and even our wastewater teams out doing work in the community. We liaise with those teams, but they are not officially part of our transportation implementation group. And then other things you might see, folks call me sometimes and they're like, this thing is happening on my street. And I'm like, interesting. I did not know a thing was happening on your street. And sometimes that's because it's either an emergency maintenance issue. Our paving crews, we typically know what they're up to. Our sign crews are out doing spot fixes all the time and doing things like updating those 20 is plenty neighborhood signs, getting those 25-mile-an-hour neighborhood signs down and the 20s up. And then we have a ton, obviously, of utility work that goes on in Denver. So if you see those utility trucks out there, I know lots of Denver water work going on, lots of Excel work going on. And then you will see private construction out there that does cause lane closures. We do approve or disapprove of lane closure permits for construction, for private construction. So that is something that I can dog down when I need to, and figure out what the duration of that closure permit or whatnot is. So handful of high profile things going on. I'm going to start the 10,000 foot view, kind of a big picture planning, longer term things, and I'm going to work down to things that you're actually seeing us doing on the ground right now. So our Denver Moves Bikes update is back in our hands after a bunch of community input, and we are working on that final product to get that out to everyone of what are our next steps with the Denver Moves Bikes program. So look for some press releases. Oops, I'm going to go back here. Press releases about that before too long here, once we get that ready for prime time. We are also currently in District 8 working on a DRCOG grant with the Montbello Loop project. So if anyone's ever heard of that, it's a project to promote biking and walking around Montbello. They have had some high level ideas in the past, some really aspirational, cool things. And DRCOG has stepped in to fund a project where we're taking those aspirational ideas of what we would like to see for community in Montbello, and putting them in terms of things that we're able to implement. So whether that's things out of our bicycle and pedestrian toolkit, or aligning them with projects that are already funded through other funding streams, really making sure we can help those folks bring that vision to life in the long run. That also includes, and apologies here, I forgot to add that in, but it does include the 303 Artway, which is also in District 8. So I'll add that to this once I'm back in editing mode later. But if anyone's ever worked with or heard of the 303 Artway, that was a project that was really hoping to get some traction where the Park Hill Golf Course rezoned, and would have had a lot of progress through that, and now they're sort of back at the drawing board trying to figure out what to do in the stead of that project moving forward, and with the golf course remaining a golf course. Another project we've got coming down the pipeline for planning is we do every year a handful of schools. We're chipping away at every school in Denver to do a safe routes to school plan for that school. And that would be an infrastructure plan for the area around that school. So if anyone around here is familiar with Central Park, Westerly Creek Elementary School is on our 2025 list of schools to do that work in. So if you know anyone or hear from anyone in that neighborhood, it's an exciting opportunity to work with our teams to do some safe routes to school changes. Those will be physical changes around the school primarily, but also some policy changes within the school and those kinds of things to support what we want to see to make it safer for kids biking and walking to school. We brought up two other BRTs, but we hadn't brought up the Colorado BRT yet. So we get a hat trick here on BRTs today. So just know that in that high level planning phase is a Colorado BRT. That one is obviously further behind these other ones. It's more in the early phases. I will say that as someone who frequents the Colorado Boulevard area, CDOT is also going to be doing some shorter term safety improvements along Colorado Boulevard. Specifically some things like Colorado and Bruce Randolph, Colorado and MLK, Colorado and 26, Colorado and 23rd, Colorado and Montview, just to like go down the line there. So some intersection improvements before we move forward with full BRT, which we're really appreciative of. Anyone who tries to bike or walk across Colorado Boulevard will know that that's much needed. And then this came up earlier, that we were calling it the parallel corridor study that came out of the Colfax BRT conversation. So that's that 13th, 14th, 17th, 18th conversation, really talking about what are we going to do, what are the impacts going to be. So just know that that is sort of in the works, in the process, and hopefully we'll have something ready for prime time before too long for folks there. 2024, 2025, we're kind of in that phase where some things are happening now, some things are going to continue on in 2025, but I wanted to bring these handful that are in construction design to you. I think that all three of these, and I'm going to knock on wood before I say this, but I believe that all three of these that are in the design process right now are funded for construction. So these are three things that sometimes, we have things that are funded for design, but not for construction. We put it on a shelf and cross our fingers that we get a grant or a program or a bond project to pay for them. But all three of these are ready to go. 2 out of the 3 are in some form bond funded. So we'll talk a little bit about the Kearney Crumeria Bikeway in the future on my next slide. That's something going in sooner than later. But we are doing some intersection improvements at both Kearney and Birch. Those are intersections where we are hoping to close those intersections to vehicular turns, to automobile turns. If anyone's familiar with the intersection of Garfield and 17th, it's kind of an example of that. Obviously, there's no through traffic happening at Garfield because the other side of that goes into City Park. But that does offer the opportunity for safe, dedicated bicycle and pedestrian crossings. We've heard from the community that these are 2 spots where that would be very much appreciated. Kearney happening first, Birch happening a little bit later. The idea being Kearney is sort of a cherry on top of the Crumeria Kearney Bikeway that's going in. That is also a huge connector for a number of schools in both districts 8 and 9. So McAuliffe International School, Smith Elementary School, Hiawatha Davis Rec Center, the library, the Boys and Girls Club. So a really great connector for kids and families to be able to use to get across what's not an ideal crossing situation right now. Quebec Street over Airlawn. This one is somewhere in between design and construction. So I opted for the construction design phase of this. Design is complete on this, but we are going through a lengthy real estate acquisition process on this one. So this one's really hard to describe where it is, but if you are on Quebec Street and you have gone under Smith Road and you're headed north towards I-70, you actually go over one more bridge that we call the Airlawn Bridge. It's kind of a wacky thing. Because of the size and scope of the bridge, we have a lot of pedestrian connectivity problems through that area. So this project and reconstruction creates pedestrian routes north and south through this area that currently don't exist for folks to access housing, shopping to the north, et cetera, and will eventually link into the Sand Creek Greenway in this area. So exciting stuff to see coming down the road. And then we do have in our design project right now some 13th and 14th safety improvements. I know we talked a lot about that section through East Colfax where speed is a huge issue, lane width is a huge issue, and it's less of a congestion problem and more of a speed problem. And we're waiting on kind of the design and concept. We'll take those back to community before too long here, but we are looking at doing some rapid response safety improvements along 13th and 14th per conversations that have been ongoing the last few years with those neighborhood associations and with those neighbors. So stay tuned. We haven't forgotten about you. We're working on it, and we'll have something for prime time before too long here. And then this, I think, is my most exciting slide because these are the things that are happening. And I like the fact that there's more bullet points on this one than all my other ones, I think, combined. So you guys are going to start seeing the Peoria Sidewalk project starting next summer. So if you're not familiar with that one already, we've done some portions of Peoria sidewalks in the I-70 area, but essentially this is going to connect 47th through 56th on the east side of Peoria, where there's currently there's no sidewalk in some places, inadequate sidewalk in other places, and then including a protected bike lane in the area north of Andrews up to 56th Avenue. So we've got a lot of extra lane width there. If anyone's driven that section, there's sort of an ad hoc third lane on the right side, and we're going to be turning that ad hoc third lane into a protected bikeway so that the sidewalk can be used by pedestrians and folks who are maybe not as confident on a bike. And then we've got folks able to commute or move a little bit faster in that protected bikeway. So exciting things coming down the line there. If you live near Smith Elementary School or know some kids who go there, that's near Jasmine and 34, I believe. I can't remember which all intersections we're improving there, but we're improving 3 intersections near the school and 1 intersection closer to the Hiawatha Davis Rec Center and the park to basically make it safer for kids to bike and walk to school there. So if you're in that neck of the woods, construction is live, crews are doing rolling closures, and we're working really closely with the school to communicate any traffic detours or anything like that happening in the community. But a great project to see going in. You will also see really soon some mobilization on the Quebec sidewalks between 12th and Montview. So that's the area along the Mosaic campus, kind of leading into Denver School of the Arts, and then crossing down south across Colfax and getting a little bit further and closer to where the sidewalks pick back up again down in the Lowry area. So a really important connection. That stretch has been really a pedestrian wasteland for a long time. It's a long time coming to get that area fixed. So all of real estate has been completed. They're doing a little bit of final utility location, but you'll see some crews mobilizing out there. And I think as part of that project, the city committed, that project is a bond funded project, but the city committed to go ahead and include that Quebec and 17th Avenue signal upgrade there. So again, that's one of our really old signals. We have limited ability to program it, limited ability for things like special timing during school, arrival and dismissal, that kind of stuff. So we'll have a lot more functionality on that light when it's replaced. So you'll see that light going in before too long here. Obviously, there won't be any downtime between lights. You'll see them build the new one around the existing old one. And then one day, magically, the new one will be functioning and the old one will get bagged. So it's going to be really cool to see that go in. I have a live camera on that one myself as my husband commutes out to Anschutz every day. So he's either biking or driving that area, and he's making sure I get updates on if any of my crews are out there. I added in a couple more here. Montbello stormwater improvements, that's Uvalde to 56th. A lot of folks up in the Montbello area are excited to see this come through. One, because it's kind of the final part of what looks like the 56th Avenue reconstruction project. This is really a project where we are partnering with our wastewater teams to make sure that we are getting water out of that neighborhood that was flooding before. As you know, one of the past wrongs that happened in the Montbello neighborhood was open channel drainage happening. And for safety purposes and a number of other reasons, open channel drainage it's not safe, it's not attractive. And so we're working on definitely undergrounding this portion here, creating drainage, get water out of the neighborhood. That's a lot more attractive. You can see that's actually what my image up on the slide here is what a lot of that's going to look like in the near future. What I'm most excited about here is really having this grand entrance to the Rocky Mountain Arsenal for bikes and peds. There's a new entrance to the Arsenal right here on the other side of 56th. And some great opportunities for wildlife viewing, et cetera, et cetera. So these communities are going to be able to access that better. And I'm excited to take my kid out to see some buffalo in the neighborhood before too long here. Kearney Cremeria, Slower Safer Street. You may have heard these programs referred to as community transportation networks in the past. We realized that was a little bit of a wonk for people, and we really wanted to explain what does community transportation network mean. And what we really mean is a slower, safer street connecting folks into our bike networks. So Kearney Cremeria is going to be our longest that we have built. It's going to go all the way from Smith Road on the north, all the way down south to the Cherry Creek Trail. So it's going to pass through everything from industrial areas all the way up to the north to some of our more fancy pants neighborhoods like Crestmore in the south. And get folks safely to the Cherry Creek Trail. We all know north-south bike routes are our trickiest ones to do here in Denver. We've got lots of east-west options, north-south's tough. And we are integrating this one in with the Colfax BRT, which is really exciting. that we're going to have the alignment for this is along Kearney from Colfax north. And then at Colfax, the BRT is going to build us a really nice two-way cycle track along the north side of Colfax Avenue. And then folks are going to be able to continue on south there along Cremeria to go through neighborhoods and have a safe place to jog over there. So they can jog over, they can access light rail or not access the BRT. So some really great opportunities for combining modes there, which I'm excited about. Obviously, Colfax BRT is under construction. I won't bore you with any more details on that because we had the pros here earlier. And then I threw in just one additional item here. It's a little bit outside of District 8, but I think affects District 8 greatly. Central Park Boulevard medians. So adding medians in on Central Park Boulevard between Chambers Road and the city line. Mostly, I think what affects folks in the Montbello neighborhood is going to be that intersection of Chambers and Central Park Boulevard. There's a lot of intersection improvements associated with this, and some turn restrictions and some other things near that commercial node that will prevent some of the creative driving that we see people do sometimes in the neighborhood. So adding those medians is going to prevent some of those illicit left turns coming in or out of the shopping area, and generally make this a nicer place for folks to drive, bike, and walk. And there will be a protected bike lane in this area. So folks who live in Montbello have kids who attend the E.V. Dennis campus over at Kittredge, just on the other side of Pena Boulevard. It'll be a much more pleasant experience biking and walking from the Montbello neighborhood over to that school campus where a lot of kids in the community go. So I said a ton of things, and then I'm going to put up the classic questions one here. And then I definitely think, Danielle, let's give you first up since you're our D8 representative.
Thanks, Maggie. I have a few things. I'll go one at a time. I think they're all pretty quick though. That Quebec and 17 signal, I can't think of it. I mean, I know it is, but off the top of my head, if it has a pedestrian signal already, by now our other old lights, especially on Syracuse, don't have pedestrian signals because they're too old to have them. Can I assume that when Quebec and 17th is put in, it will also have like pedestrian crossing signals? Okay, cool.
Exactly. It's going to have sort of the cream of the crop there, because between the schools on the Mosaic campus, Denver School of the Arts, and then the elementary school that's on the far side, just a little bit closer to Syracuse over there, there's a great need for improved bike and pedestrian crossing there. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thanks. And then we had talked, I think a couple of years ago when I was with ECNA, about doing a mass request for 311, because in our we have obviously 3 of our neighborhoods are NEST neighborhoods in our district, and we see that NEST neighborhoods tend to not submit 311 cases, and so then the improvements don't happen that are needed. We never actually settled on anything there, I don't think. Is that something that we could pick up and discuss further? Is that something I should discuss directly with you? And, or do you have other ideas of what that could look like?
Yeah, that's definitely something we can discuss. And one thing I just want to clarify on that, and I think you're speaking in the side of this that makes sense. Folks, I think sometimes think if they report the same item a bunch of times, it's going to magically move up on a priority list. And the reality is we just close out duplicate cases and they get awkward. Your case is closed because we already have a case for this open. And so what I would like to see in East Colfax is us collect, and maybe it's door knocking, maybe it's through neighborhood newsletter or whatnot. What are people's concerns? Maybe they don't have the technical savvy, they're concerned about language skills, etc., to put those into 311 and get those lodged for them into 311. So we can definitely do that. I'll put my email in the chat before I take off today. You can reach out to me and we can talk about some ways to, like you said, get folks either more comfortable using the system or knowing the system has a number of flaws, which I will not bore you with today because they're the bane of my existence. See if we can get those in the system for them.
Okay, perfect. Yes, and we are aligned on what my intention was for
yeah.
what I said mask. Yeah. And then 13th and 14th improvements, obviously we're really interested and excited about anything and everything that is to come there. What is the best way for us to keep updated? I know you said hopefully information will be coming soon. Yeah, what's the best way to connect or make sure that we're in the loop as soon as that does get announced?
Yeah, for sure. So we're at a phase now where I believe the engineering and design teams are running the potential changes past the council office. So we will be pushing those out via council office channels, and then also emailing whoever the people of record are at the RNOs. So look for that. If it's not you, chat with who on your RNO is the person who receives those city official notifications. But otherwise, it will also be going out through Councilwoman Lewis's office.
Perfect. And then my last one was we had a bunch of sidewalks that had been approved back in 2019 to connect especially the apartment complexes to Colfax on some of the main thoroughfares. And my understanding is those are still supposed to be implemented at the beginning of the larger citywide sidewalks program. I just didn't see that on your updates. I was curious if you know where that project is at the moment.
What I know, and I'll let Nick kind of jump in if he's got a little bit more than I do, is we've been chipping away at getting that project moving forward because there are just some hiccups in the system we needed to fix before we could move that out. But my understanding is we're kind of going live in January to talk about it, and I'm not sure how prioritization and stuff will go. So I'll let you jump in, Nick, so I don't say anything stupid.
No, it was all brilliant, Maggie. I don't think I have much to add to that. We've got contractors spinning up right now on that, but definitely will be a subject for as we get into January and start collecting the fees there. So yeah, not much to add from what Maggie said.
Yeah. So fees will go live in January. We'll start collecting those dollars. And then one of the kooky things that, kind of until you exist in this world long enough, you don't realize is that there's only so much concrete that's being made in the city and so many people who know how to put it down. So we've been working with our contractor community simultaneously to make sure that once we start putting out packages and prioritizing areas, that we actually have someone who can do the work out there. So.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for everything. Really appreciate it, Maggie. And thanks, Nick, for stepping in there as well. And appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else? I don't remember what our next month's presenter is. Nick might have that info handy, but what our next, we kind of take turns over here on the community design team, bringing these projects forward. So you'll see another face next month, but in 4 months, you'll see me again. Probably talking about Fine District 9, my home district. So happy to do that one. All right.
Next month,
well,
Maggie, we are taking it down to District 2, so Southwest Denver.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. That sounds great. Well, I will stop sharing my screen here. I will put my email in the chat here so that you guys have it if you think of anything on your bike ride home tonight that you meant to ask me. But otherwise, I'm going to go find my bike in the garage and go home and see my kid.
Maggie and all the DOTI staff that joined us tonight, thank you all so much. We know coming in, staying a little bit after typical work hours, we really appreciate it as well as for the entire board. So thanks again.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate all of your sentiments and know that there's a lot of folks on DOTI kind of on the same team as you, and we really want to see these projects get done. And thank you for standing up for our projects and helping us get them down on the ground. My heart dies a little bit every time I get yelled at for putting in a slower, safer street. So it's always good to hear positive feedback from folks. So thank you.
Great. Thank you guys for fighting the good fight for more sustainable and safer streets. We really appreciate it, pulling the value. So that brings us to the odds and ends. We've got 2 minutes left for that. Maggie helped cut us off some time by being succinct on her presentation. Anybody from the board have anything they'd like to bring up?
Yeah, this is Gary. We could use a couple more folks on the policy committee if you're interested. Give me a shout or send me an email or something. I'll get you tied in.
Gary, could you remind everyone, when is the next policy committee meeting? What time and day?
Yeah, it is on Wednesday, the 20th at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it goes from 10 to 10:50. So it's an hour's worth of your time. On the 20th, November 20th. It's always the third Wednesday.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Gary. We'll look forward to hearing more once the agenda's solidified for that. And quick reminder, you all should have saw the email today. We are doing the survey on DOTI permitting, gathering feedback from community, whether it's folks that you might know in the construction, architectural, developing fields, as well as individual homeowners, to ask how things are going with that, both the good and room for improvement areas, aligns with kind of the Mayor's Transition Committee goals. So I dropped the link in chat just so you all have it handy. So please feel welcome to spread that to your networks within Denver, in hopes that we can gather some community input to help speed up that process. But I've understood that things have already accelerated. So good news on that front.
Also, feel free to kick me an invite for the policy committee meeting.
Great. Thank you, June. We'll be sure to have an invite for you on there. And that's 6 o'clock. So thank you all for joining us, Nick and all the DOTI staff, Director Ford. It's always great to, I know you had to hop off, but just wanted to shout out. It's great to have the executive director here. We appreciate her willingness to engage with the board and with community. So thank you all, and have a lovely November, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.